Welcome to another live edition of the Sports Sentiment. I am your host, Nick Urias, and we are back once again talking college football. Folks, good to be with you once again. It's been about 2 weeks since our last live stream, and the countdown to kickoff is officially on. Next weekend, next Saturday, week 0 of the college football season officially kicks off August 29th, San Jose State and Central Michigan. Friday night, 7:30. The Spartans and the Chippewas will do battle in San Jose. Week 1 is upon us. Week 0 is coming right up. And with that, we're going to be talking just some Mountain West storylines, some Mountain West updates, some quarterback news just around the league. We're going to first and foremost just want to start out with some San Jose State stuff. Fall camp. They're about 3 weeks into this thing now. There's been a lot of confidence within the group. No doubt, San Jose State football. Obviously, there is a lot of high hopes for this team this year. If you're new to the party here, third in the preseason polls, they got themselves a manageable schedule to say the least in the Mountain West this year, and they're looking to make some real noise in the league this year. Potential Mountain West championship. At least the fan base believes that. San Jose State can have themselves a historic season. And of course, it all comes down to, the players on the field and them ultimately trying to do that. But the vibes have been high, and, they're trying to, do some things in some big ways this year. The schedule is most definitely manageable, but, just some storylines and some updates from someone that I could, deliver to the folks listening here on, just San Jose State and, just some things going on. There's a lot of players coming back. This is a team that is very much got tons of roster continuity, which is hard to come by these days. There's certain units within certain teams in the Mountain West this year, like San Diego State and Hawaii return a lot of the defense this season. Boise State overall just returns a lot of the production, especially in the secondary and the offensive line. And for the most part, the skill position is back for Boise. And in San Jose State, this is a team that has tons of players back. 4 out of 5, 4 starters on the offensive line, all 3 running backs from last year, the starting quarterback in Walker Eget. A large majority of that defense outside of a couple players and, the 2 guys and the 2 cornerbacks that transferred and DJ Harvey and Michael Dansby aren't there anymore. But San Jose State replaced that. So there is tons of, players that have been here from last year to this year. And I've talked to tons of guys. I've talked to guys that have been there from last year, guys that have just arrived in San Jose, and everybody's just been saying that not only are the vibes are high, but just overall with Coach Ken, head coach Ken Niumatalolo, San Jose State head coach, him coming in last year, everybody was just trying to figure out, maybe not the culture in a sense, but just trying to figure each other out and, just build that, chemistry with, just being in the room together, because sometimes, that could be not the most easiest thing to do, especially when you got so many guys coming in and so many guys coming out. Now, when you got, the foundation already set from what's been set in stone from last year, and all of these guys are coming back and it's rinse and repeat in the same routine, that makes life a whole lot easier on you. And it makes a period right now in fall camp, like it's just another day at work. So, for San Jose State, that's, I think, the good thing that they got going for them. I personally, just from, if you're a fan of the team or just whatever, you want as many guys as you want back, obviously. And you want a team that is familiar with each other, because a lot of times, that could lead, you can hit the ground running in week 1 and, it's like clockwork, versus some of these teams in the Mountain West this year, like a UNLV, like an Air Force, like a Fresno State, that got some changes at the quarterback position, that got some changes, at the head coaching spot. All of a sudden, now some things change, and it's not like San Jose State, they're going to be figuring each other out in week 1 for Central Michigan. Those other teams will be. Air Force is going to have no idea what they have at the quarterback position until they take the field at Falcon Stadium versus Bucknell week 1. Who knows what that UNLV offense is going to look like in 11 on 11 play versus Idaho State. So there's a bunch of different dynamics to this. And I just think, those teams like Boise State and San Jose State, I think Hawaii, another team that's a prime example. There's teams out there where you're like, okay, you could feel comfortable about where the roster at and where the personnel is going to be at and how the matchup may be in week 1 or week 0 because of, guys being familiar with each other. I think the prime example is Hawaii versus Stanford in week 0 next Saturday. By the way, we will take a deep dive on the week 0 games next week on a separate podcast. But for now, I just want to, just touch on, just some Mountain West updates, talk about some standing stuff, some scheduling things that I have on tap here. But as I was saying, Hawaii versus Stanford in week 0 next Saturday, just one of these prime examples. Who in the heck knows what you're getting with Stanford? The Stanford Cardinal announced that they're starting Ben Gulbranson, who's like in year 7 of college and came from Oregon State. Very much one of these guys that is, he's a statue in the pocket, but he needs a lot of things to go around him to be right. A lot of things to be successful. A good offensive line, good running back play, wide receivers, that could make plays, obviously. He's one of these system quarterbacks that needs to flourish in a certain scheme, to ultimately be successful. That's how he was 7-1 as a starter a few years ago at Oregon State. But my point is that you got all these question marks with Stanford, with the coaching change and Frank Reich taking over with no coaching experience, right? Versus you got this Hawaii Rainbow Warrior team where, okay, I kind of understand it's a small sample size with Micah Alejado, but I know to an extent what I'm going to get with him at the quarterback position. I know what I'm going to get with Pofele Ashlock and, Nick Sinackle. There's a tons of guys. Hawaii is returning so much from last year to this year. And I think that is a massive advantage for them when they're going up against a team like Stanford, which has all of these personnel changes and they've just had so little time together, to really, gain that chemistry. So these are the teams that, like the San Jose States, the Boise States, and Hawaii. I think those 3 teams probably jump off the page to me. You can maybe throw an Air Force in there, but uncertainty with the quarterback position. Those are the teams that you got to like in the early stages of the season. Now, things can obviously change. A team could, all of a sudden catch fire in conference play and, they take off up and running. So, there's a bunch of different dynamics to it, but that's an angle that I personally like. When you got players coming back, when you got returners, the first couple of weeks, I'd say the first 2 weeks are a massive advantage for those teams that just have so many returners. So that's something that I just wanted to mention that I think is just an advantage for, just San Jose State. Central Michigan, for an example, first year head coach and Matt Drinkel. There's who knows what their quarterback situation is going to look like. New running backs, new offensive linemen, new schemes. I mean, they got a brand new offensive and defensive coordinator. So they're to an extent, they're a question mark on what we're going to see from them in week 1. We hope to gain some clarity on that. So that's things you have to take in consideration here. Like I said, the first couple weeks of the season. But as far as San Jose State is concerned, just some updated, storylines, I would say, from fall camp. The QB2 battle. Everyone knows this is Walker Eagle's show. This is, his time with San Jose State to command and control this offense with Craig Stutzman and Coach Ken and company. But the QB2 battle, God forbid if something happened to Walker Eagle, that battle is still wide open, folks. And we talked to Xavier Ward, earlier this week, backup quarterback. He said that, look, this is as much as we're battling right now, and as much as we're trying to win the QB2 battle, this is a tight knitted group. And he even admitted, in past quarterback rooms, that hasn't been the case. This has been the most connected and, locked in group that, I've been a part of as far as the quarterback room is concerned. So, that is a very tight group. So, and whether it's been between, Xavier Ward, Robert McDaniel, the UCLA transfer that arrived in spring, and Tame Amason, the true freshman. There's a ton of options out there, for San Jose State at the QB2 battle, and it's been pretty much wide open since we started camp. So that's where we're at with that right now. The kicking battle. Right now the starting kicker is still to be determined. Matthias Brown and Dennis Litch have been, pretty much going at it, battling. And that's, again, we talked to Dennis Lynch, the USC transfer, kicked 2 years ago versus the Trojans. He drilled a 53-yard field goal. I think that's his career long. Didn't kick last year because they brought somebody else in, and then he came to San Jose State, and he's battling with Matthias Brown. Matthias Brown was doing a lot of the kickoff stuff last year, kicking off the tee, and while Kyler Halverson was pretty much the main guy in the field goal unit, last year for the Spartan specialist. So yeah, Matthias Brown and Dennis Lynch currently battling it out. Probably won't get an answer on that until week 1, until, we see these guys, in full circle taking the field. So that's what I got on that. The offensive line, we talked about this 2 weeks ago, but the offensive line, from what just the people that I've talked to, whether it be Tyler Chen, who had himself a massive roller coaster season last year, sailed a bunch of passes in week 1 over Emmett Brown's head, got benched like in the second quarter just because, or like midway through the first quarter, because it was just so astronomically bad and, pretty much stonewalling the Spartan offense in that Sac State game last year in week 1. And, they had to make some changes on the fly. But to Tyler Chen's credit, got benched, earned a spot back on the offensive line, left guard, right guard. He was playing anywhere just to get on the field. And to his credit, ended up finishing off the season at left guard and played very well. So Tyler Chen, he said, that was a very humbling moment for me, in that just the roller coaster season that he had, and getting benched week 1. That's a guy that, is a very confident. If you listen to our interview, he is a very talkative guy. He's not afraid to sugarcoat it. And, he's a well-respected guy within that Spartan locker room. A lot of guys love him. He's got a lot of energy. Just a great guy to have on that offensive line if you're SJSU. And, just the vocal leader as well. Which I think is important to have at every position group, quite honestly. So, Tyler Chen, we talked to him, last week or a few weeks back, and he says this offensive line they're in a good spot. And I think that there's going to be a lot of strides within this unit this year. That's personally what he thought. We'll see what it looks like when they take the field. I'm just interested, from the aspect that everybody's been saying San Jose State's going to run the ball more. I think, if they can successfully run the ball and, their offensive line takes the strides that they need to, like, there's going to be some points in this season where if they have that 10-point cushion, in the fourth quarter, 10 minutes left in the conference game, go get us a drive with points, and let's just go run the ball down the opposition's throat. I think that is what San Jose State wants to do more of this year. At least that's what I think, because there was a lot of times last year where, a Washington State game, a prime example, where they maybe didn't feel so good about the run game last year. And, which is where the offensive line was in that Washington State game. That was like week 3, week 4. And, tons of moving parts at that position at that time. And all of a sudden, San Jose State's got like a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter of that game. And, they're still slinging the ball like crazy, like they're, trailing by 14, right? So I think and ultimately they went on to lose that game in double overtime. Spartan fans don't need to hear that story again. But my point is that when you're in a situation like that, I think you could manage the clock a whole lot more better because maybe the coaching staff is more confident within those units. I talked to Coach Craig Stutzman today. He said, and he even like he basically said like the run game is something we want to lean on. And I think they just overall feel more confident about their backs and the offensive line. And it's just a matter of, will we see that this year? Because let's not sugarcoat it. I talked to him, before the year started last year, and he says we're going to run the ball. And what did SJSU do? Weren't confident in running the ball. So we'll see. We'll see the situations in the spots when they get on the field. There was not many drives last year where they were able to just ground and pound it. Not many at all, if any. And, we're going to see if SJSU can have those type of drives, because I have a feeling if they're able to do that, there's going to be a lot of these games that are hanging there in conference play, whether it be an Air Force or a Nevada or whatever the case, whatever matchup it may be, where maybe the offense isn't going on a certain night. And all of a sudden, here comes Floyd Chalk coming right into your living room. Lamar Radcliffe with an angry run on 4th and 1 to move the sticks and get a fresh set of downs. So I'm interested just to see if SJSU can have any success in that regard this year. Just on the line of scrimmage, because they weren't that much of a physical team last year. And I think if they could go toe to toe with the team like that, like Nevada or, Air Force, especially the way that, they run the option, that could be a massive plus to this team that maybe not a lot of people are talking about. Everyone wants to talk about throwing the ball in the air raid and the spread and shred, which everybody gets it. That's going to be the primary, point of attack here for, with the way SJSU scores points. They're going to score touchdowns and they're going to deliver it to a lot of receivers this year. But it's just a matter of, can they have a little bit more balanced attack? Because I would say it was about 85 to 90% pass and 10% run. Can you get me to that 70%, 30%? I would say 70% pass, 30% run. Drill some clock a little bit. And because ultimately what killed, San Jose State, especially in the Boise State game last year at home, was, they were slinging the ball like crazy, and they had so much success against a Boise State pass defense, which there was a lot of great things about Boise State last year, but that was the weakness, the pass defense. And San Jose State exposed it last year in the home game versus Boise State. And what happened? They turned over the ball. That's the one thing about this offense. And I think it's a big thing with Walker Eggett, and the coaching staff has most certainly told him that he has to have proper ball security. If he takes off and run, he has to get down first and foremost, with his dive, not the slide. We've made that clear that he's going to be doing the dive this year, as he did last year as well. But most importantly, ball security, because there's going to be all these edge rushers and all these linebackers and all these D linemen now. Sometimes they don't even go for the tackle. They just go straight for the punch out and, try to punch the ball out, force a turnover. And then that's when all hell breaks loose. So for the loose ball. So ball security is obviously essential, especially the way that, the quick strike ability that San Jose State has to score points, because as much as you may want to score points, and score quickly. And, that's what SJSU wants to do. There's no secret to that. We got a whole season of tape to understand that. There comes to a point though, where if you're scoring too fast, the offense has a chance to rebuttal with maybe more time than what you want. So that just goes back to my original point about, if you have the run game in your back pocket and you could rely on it, I think you could be in a lot more, you could feel a whole lot more better about yourself in these 4 quarters, in those fourth quarter situations, 10 minutes, 8 minutes, heck, even 6 minutes left. When the opposition has 3 timeouts and, you have the opportunity to go on one of those 5-minute drives and make the opposing head coach call all three of the timeouts, and all the coaching philosophy and the art of the head coaching position really starts to become a massive impact. So I'm interested to see how if the Spartans have that capability this year. And I think that just ties back to our whole point about the offensive line. And I out of all the people I've talked to, they feel really good about where they're at as a unit. With 2 weeks heading in, 2 weeks away from week 1. I know we visited about Jalen Applett-Williams, the safety for San Jose State. Very impressed with the kid. I mean, he's 23 years old. You could go listen to the interview if you haven't already on the channel. But Jalen Applett-Williams, like when you talk to him, like this is a guy where you got to feel really good about the secondary from the aspect that, look, this is a kid that has been here since 2021 season. And he knows exactly how this defense plays. But when you listen to him talk, he's not all about himself. And this is a guy that hasn't played a whole lot. His stats are not going to jump off the page to you. He is a team first guy. He wants to win a Mountain West championship. And he is just completely locked in on week 1. He's like, I need to make sure this defense is ready for Central Michigan. That's exactly what he told me. And he told me this 3 weeks ago. So I've been very impressed with him from a leadership standpoint, because you can just tell the way he talks to the media. He's talking to players on the field. That is a guy that's well respected within that locker room. And, I think, there may be some uncertainty to an extent, with the Malachi Crawford and Caleb Presley at the cornerback position. Who knows? We'll see how it pans out week 1, but we'll see. They feel pretty comfortable about where they're at. From the standpoint that they could be ready to make an impact, but who knows? I'm not going to speculate on that right now at all. But hey, overall, I think San Jose State, they're picked 3rd in the preseason polls. A lot of Spartan fans been arguing higher. Like I said, everybody feels comfortable within this group. And count down the kickoff 2 weeks away for Central Michigan. Did want to bring up some other, just updates among the Mountain West. Fresno State. The Fresno State Bulldogs, first-year head coach and Matt Entz. They got Josh Davis, offensive coordinator, former South Dakota Coyote play caller. There's been a quarterback battle out there in the Central Valley. 3-quarterback battle between the Rice transfer EJ Warner, son of Kurt Warner, Carson Conklin. Coming over from Sac State. San Jose State saw him last year. He looked pretty good in the very minimal play that he had. He actually took over the back end of the season last year for Sac State. I believe in their FCS playoff run. Carson Conklin did. He's a Fresno State Bulldog, and then Jaden Mandel, their one returner at the quarterback position, played the bowl game last year in the famous Idaho Potato Bowl versus Northern Illinois. Crazy bowl game. But they had those 3 guys had a QB battle. EJ Warner ultimately won it, which if you were going to say, like, okay, if you were going to put money on who was going to win the battle, you'd probably say like EJ Warner, just because he's got the most experience out of all of those guys. But Coach Matt Entz, his comments were, look, we're going to make sure that he's executing at a high level, and we're going to make sure, maybe he said the word short leash. He said, I wouldn't use the word short leash, but we're going to make sure he's executing. And what that tells me is that if EJ Warner is throwing some interceptions, they play week 0 next week versus Kansas, at the brand new Kansas Jayhawk Stadium. You're probably not going to win that game because I think Kansas is going to be very good in the Big 12 this year. And, first year head coach, still trying to maybe figure out some things. It's just a tough spot going into a true road game. That's going to be a very loud environment in Lawrence in week 0. So that's a little bit of a tall task if you're the Fresno State Bulldogs. But Week one versus Georgia Southern, the home game. That is a game that you need to have. And, I would say it's probably a coin flip game. Georgia Southern played feisty last year versus Boise State. One of these teams that, they play really good in the first half of the season and then, crash and burn in the second half towards in the Sun Belt Conference. So they're going to definitely be playing, it's week one for Georgia Southern, but that's a game for Fresno that they need to have. And I think this coaching staff and this fan base is going to be all eyes on, EJ Warner. Look, EJ Warner is, he's going to be playing with Fresno State and the Fresno State Bulldogs. That is a loud fan base. And that is a fan base that's not going to be afraid to speak their mind when it comes to their football program. And EJ Warner, a guy that came from Temple and a guy that came from Rice. With all due respect to those programs, Fresno State's a different beast as far as following expectations. I'm interested to see how this plays out. I wouldn't be shocked if he's not executing, and Fresno State has themselves a losing record by week 5. Maybe Fresno does try out a guy like Carson Conklin. EJ Warner has not been one of these guys either that has shown much mobility in his career, which I think is pretty interesting because Matt Entz at North Dakota State worked with 2 mobile quarterbacks, Trey Lance and Cam Miller. What did those guys both have in common? They got mobility, and they were really good at running, both of those guys. So from the standpoint of that and just, past history, Carson Conklin is I would say, is a pretty good runner. Like he's I would say he's a much better runner than EJ Warner. I'm just curious to see, just based on, past history there with Coach Matt Entz, and we'll see how just how the eye test looks with Fresno State this year, and just their offense through the first couple of weeks. But I wouldn't be shocked if we see a Carson Conklin at some point in the season if EJ Warner is just not executing at a high level, and things are getting late early for the Bulldogs, maybe in conference play. So I think everything potentially could be on the table because that was a 3-man battle that came right down to, look, a week before the season started. So, which Matt Entz did want to name a starter around this time anyway. He wanted to make sure that the ones were running with the ones, and he had a starter, just executing from that standpoint of things. As far as San Diego State's concerned, another quarterback battle. Jaden Denegal wins the starting job for the Aztecs over Bert Emanuel Jr., the Central Michigan transfer. I will say that both of these guys, Bert Emanuel's got more experience than Jaden Denegal. Denegal's got 7 pass attempts in his career. Former Michigan Wolverine. He's got he's got like a Josh Allen type body, as far as, build and height and weight is concerned, which I think could be a plus in this Aztec fast offense. But it's one of these things with San Diego State, from an offensive standpoint, I still don't know what I'm going to get. And how is this learning curve going to be with the quarterback that's never really played before? A whole lot more responsibility. There's just a whole lot going on there from that aspect of things for the San Diego State offense, which has me at a big fat question mark with that offense. And you sure are not going to learn a damn thing versus Stony Brook in week 1 outside of just feeling good about yourself among everybody and, all the positions across the board, because you should be able to out physical the Seawolves, and that game's going to be over by the second quarter. So that's what we got going on. I'm trying to think if there's any other quarterback battles. I mean, New Mexico's quarterback situation has been pretty interesting, just because Jack Lane has been on a pitch count. He's coming back from an injury, which has held him out of fall camp a little bit. So, but the familiarity is there. It's Jason X, quarterback from Idaho last year. I would think he's going to win the starting job come week 1 time frame. So I would be shocked if he didn't. If anything, it might be the injury held him back. But New Mexico, just because of the relationship with Jason Eck and Jack Lane, I would be quite honestly a little bit surprised if Jack Lane wasn't the week 1 starter. Nevada's going to be rolling out Chuba Purdy. Wyoming, they know who they're rolling out. Utah State is pretty clear, along with Hawaii. And UNLV has been another interesting one. My guess would be that Anthony Calandria starts week 1, the Virginia transfer. But that's been a QB battle with I'm blanking on the kid's name, the Michigan transfer, Alex Orji, who got some time with the Wolverines last year. And they still got Cameron Friel still in that pipeline as well, if necessary. But it's been Calandria versus Orji for the most part, and I would lean on the Virginia transfer winning QB1 there. But the big ones were pretty much Fresno State and San Diego State, which with the San Diego State, going back to the Aztecs real quick, there has been Sean Lewis hasn't ruled out about running 2 quarterbacks either. Which can be a little bit dangerous, but at least from rolling out Burt Emanuel in certain packages and stuff, and getting Denegal a break, on a certain down, if that favors them, on maybe on a 4th and short, and Burt Emanuel runs to the outside or whatever. So they have that in their toolbox as well. I wouldn't be shocked if they go into that and deep dive into those situations in certain situations this year. I do got the Mountain West schedule that I do want to load up right here with just from top to bottom, just everybody's schedule. So there's a couple interesting spots that I do have circled for some of these teams. I think, like I've said before, Air Force is a fascinating situation. Week 1 versus Bucknell. They looked terrible last year versus Merrimack. I just want to watch. Air Force is not going to lose to Bucknell, the Bison. I just want to, like I said before on our last live stream, I just want to see Air Force and how they look offensively and how in sync do they look with whatever quarterback they roll out. That's actually the one quarterback situation, which, quite honestly, Troy Calhoun doesn't like to say anything to the press. He was even keeping it vanilla with me at media day. So I'd be shocked if you get any news, in a week from now in regards to the Air Force quarterback situation. But it's going to be, Josh Johnson versus Liam Zarka there. And it's going to come down to whoever runs the offense more fluid. And that's the guy I'd feel more comfortable with. Air Force from that, just area. Air Force has got that weird scheduling spot. Air Force week 1 versus Bucknell, and then you got a week 2 bye. I'm not really sure how I feel about that, especially coming off an FCS team. And then you got the conference game afterwards. Their schedule's a little bit weird, just because they have to throw in Army and Navy, and then they got that series that they've been running with UConn here for a couple years now. Boise State. Look, Boise State has got that tricky game at South Florida. And now I'm just, from what I've been reading and, just watching numbers move and such, all the wise guys in Vegas seem to love South Florida week 1 versus Boise State, to at least keep it close, which I think is pretty interesting. I think the perfect comparison is Boise State versus Georgia Southern last year. I think there is a whole lot of preseason hype with South Florida. They bring back Byron Brown. They attack the portal a little bit, but I think Boise State, I'd be shocked if they lost that game. I think it's a game they probably win by a touchdown. It won't be easy. They've been practicing in in certain elements to get them ready for, the humid weather on a Thursday afternoon in South Florida. But that's definitely a compelling game. You got the week 0 games, Fresno at Kansas, Hawaii hosting Stanford, which, those are some interesting games. I would be shocked if Hawaii lost to Stanford, quite honestly. I know some people view that as a coin flip game, but Hawaii just with what they got returning, I just can't see a situation where Stanford is going to go in there and Hawaii's going to score a lot of points this year, folks. I just don't see a situation where Ben Branson is going to say, hey, let's go up and down the field with these guys 37-30 and let's make it happen. If Stanford wins, they're going to have to win like 17-10 and their defense is going to have to come up big, which wasn't very good in the ACC last year, and they got a whole lot more moving parts in regards to that. We already talked about Fresno at Kansas. That might be an uphill battle. I'll have a more enhanced, detailed preview on that game next week. But as of right now, Fresno, they might be a little bit in tough, just from that aspect of hostile and Big 12 environment and their first-year head coach. There's some certain angles there. I want to talk about Nevada's schedule. And I talked about this with Jeff Cho at Media Day, which is now over a month ago now, or nearly a month ago. Nevada's had themselves, this is back-to-back years where they got themselves like this weird but intriguing non-conference schedule. At Penn State, where they're going to get demolished by like 5 touchdowns. I don't expect them to, be competitive in that one. Penn State's going to be good this year. But then they got this weird game versus Sac State, which I would be pretty damn scared in week 1 or week 2 when it is versus Sac State. I understand it's a home game, it's your home opener, but Sac State, all of a sudden the Hornets and that administration is just pumping millions into that program. They bring in a whole lot of steak and sizzle with their head coaching hires with Brennan Marion. I think they're starting like Jaden Rashada at quarterback, who was like at Arizona State and Florida. That kid's been all over the place. He's made more dough than, actually played football, on a football field in college. But there's just a whole lot of intrigue with the Hornets. If Nevada's not ready in that game, and then you're coming off a physical game versus Penn State, that's just a game that's just Nevada could lose that game. Like, it wouldn't shock me if Nevada lost that game, and oh my goodness, like that would just be terrible. And then you got Middle Tennessee and Western Kentucky to set up after that. If I had to take a guess, I would say Nevada goes 2-2 in this stretch between those 4 non-conference opponents, Penn State, Sac State, Middle Tennessee, and Western Kentucky, with you getting wins versus Sac State and Middle Tennessee. And going to Western Kentucky, that's not going to be easy, especially with the way that the Hilltoppers are loaded up this year on offense. That can be a little bit tricky, but man, there is a possibility, and there is a path where Nevada starts 1-3 or maybe 0-4, and you're going into that week 5 bye thinking, now we got to go play the Mountain West. But there's also a situation where you go 3-1 and win at Western Kentucky and take care of close games versus Middle and Sac State. So that's a non-conference schedule where I think could flip big time. That's got the biggest, I would say, range as far as where these teams can be at. Nevada could be 1-3, or they could be 3-1 heading into their week 5 bye. UNLV, they got some of these, by the way, that UNLV, that you see the Idaho State Bengals September 13th, that should be on August 23rd. That's a week 0 game that got moved up. But, I'm interested to just see how these Mountain West teams play versus the MAC. We got tons of those this year. I would say it's about 50-50, believe it or not, because a lot of times these MAC teams end up hosting the Mountain West school. And sometimes you get these weird results. The MAC is always one of these weird conferences. Like San Diego State lost to Central Michigan last year. And, San Jose State lost at Toledo a few years back. Like Wyoming's at Akron. I don't know how that got on the schedule, but that's for week 1. That's kind of a funny game. I would expect the Cowboys to win that one. Utah State and UTEP is an interesting one. That's going to be I was going to say a Mountain West rivalry, but nope, because Utah State will be darting into the Pac-12. But UTEP, they'll be in the Mountain West next year. Utah State and UTEP is just kind of one of those games where I got some interest in it, just because I think UTEP, by the way, folks, could be like a 7-win team this year. And Utah State with Bronco Mendenhall and Bryson Barnes. I'm a big Bryson Barnes guy. Like, I think offensive coordinator Kevin McGivern's going to be able to do a lot of good things this year and, make these guys comfortable. So I'm just very interested to see how that pans out in what could be a maybe not a coin flip game, but a game versus Utah State and UTEP. That could be close, in the third or fourth quarter. UTEP actually still trying to determine their starting quarterback situation as well. They're in the middle of a battle, so interested to see how that pans out. Malachi Nelson, former Boise State Bronco, former USC Trojan, he is in that quarterback room battling at UTEP of all places, trying to get on the football field, and he's in the middle of a battle at UTEP. So that's the schedule from a wide perspective for all the teams in the league. There's a couple of the conference games where you circle and you go, wow, that's going to have some interesting storylines. Obviously, the biggest one, New Mexico versus Utah State, with Bronco Mendenhall leading New Mexico above expectations last year, darts and goes back home and takes the Utah State job. Bronco Mendenhall, now with Utah State, has made it public on several different outlets, including mine, saying, I'm not looking forward to going back to Albuquerque. It just might be one of those things where just the way that the fan base of New Mexico felt about his departure, him going back to, a place where he only spent 1 year, I think it could be a bunch of different situations. So I would say New Mexico will definitely be hungry in that game. And it's going to be one of these games where New Mexico is going to probably beat them, if I had to be honest. So there is that situation as well. Colorado State, before we jump out of this, just wide range of the Mountain West schedule, Colorado State's got that tough non-conference stretch. At Washington versus the Huskies, that's an 8 p.m. kickoff week 1. Then they're hosting Little Brother in Northern Colorado, hosting UTSA, the Roadrunners. That's a high-flying offense with Owen McCown and company. And then they get Washington State, which is basically South Dakota State in Washington State uniforms. So that won't be an easy game either. That's another one, kind of like Nevada. You could go 3-1 or 1-3, and Braden Fowler, Nicolosi and company definitely got to be ready for that. If they want to, head into some good momentum heading into conference play, because then they got that San Diego State matchup on October 4th, which is a primetime game in San Diego. Before we close things out here on the live stream, I'm going to go ahead and drop my predictions for the Mountain West, basically my preseason poll, with some records thrown in there as well. Nobody come at me on Twitter because, there may be some angry people. Fan bases won't be probably happy. There's always one fan base that, you're not going to be, this guy has us picked where and this and that. I could be completely wrong about the teams. This is, again, just my projections. And here's the thing. Teams could be red hot week 1. Others may be scuffling week 8. Another team may be rising and falling. And another team, you might just figure out by week 3, okay, they're problematic. So this is where we're at with my Mountain West projections. I got Boise State at number 1, the favorite. I do think Boise State is going to lose a conference game this year. Look, here's the deal with Boise. I think it would be a massive letdown if they didn't make the Mountain West championship game. Like, that is 100%. They are the most talented team from top to bottom. They don't play the easiest schedule, but there is a situation with Boise State this year that you don't have Ashton Jeanty. And I mean that from the point where you're going to still be able to run the ball successfully. Just from a defensive standpoint, the game planning is going to be so much different, because what was happening with Boise State in these games last year is when they would go up against these other teams. Go rewatch the UNLV game towards the back end of the season, or middle to the back end of the season. Go look how many guys were in the box in the fourth quarter and throughout the entirety of the game on defense for the Rebels last year. I don't know, maybe 9 guys. Like, they were just all in on Ashton Jeanty. And if a Latrell Caples, a Matt Lauder, or anybody else beat us, they were going to live with it. They did not want to get torched by Jeanty last year, and that's why he had his second worst game statistically of the season, minus Penn State, was because UNLV was able to play him pretty much. We're going all in on Jeanty, and if anyone else beats us, God bless them. So Boise State, from that perspective, I think Malik Sherrod, great back from Fresno State. I think Syer Gaines is going to have himself a hell of a year, and people are going to know his name by the end of the season in the Boise State backfield. But I think there is a spot in this schedule where they do slip up one of these games. I don't think it's Utah State. I think it could potentially be a Nevada Wolfpack team where they catch him on a primetime game on a Friday night. It's just Nevada had him on the ropes last year. Jeff Choate plays Boise very good. We've seen him. He's a former assistant, so he knows that program very well. He had him almost gift wrapped last year. And then, Nevada just, and Brendan Lewis and company just were stuck in neutral in the fourth quarter. So I'm interested to see, just those type of matchups, especially that one, Boise State versus Nevada, because if there is a game, I think Boise State could slip up versus Nevada in that game. That was one that I probably circled like, okay, this one's going to be pretty close when it might be on upset alert. Look, San Jose State 9-3 and 6-2. I know maybe Spartan fans might necessarily like that. I don't think they're going to win the Texas game. And look, Wyoming at Utah State is a tough stretch, folks. And it's just one of those situations where you're going to be in altitude for 2 weeks. You're going to have that Saturday game versus Wyoming, and then you're at the game plan for Bronco Mendenhall in the second half. I don't think it's going to be easy. Bronco Mendenhall teams only get better as the season goes on. It's proven at this point in so many different places. Even if Utah State starts out slow, heck, even if they lose to UTEP and come out sluggish, there's a situation where I would feel good about Utah State towards November timeframe, October timeframe, because he showed that at New Mexico. And look, I think that offense is going to be good under Bryson Barnes. Like, they got the backs to do it. The wide receivers, I think, are going to be good, and no one's talking about them. And that defense can only improve from last year. So that's where I'm at with that. I think if you're going to circle a game, that Utah State game does have danger written all over it just because of a back-to-back road situation. And that I think San Diego State or Nevada, I would probably say Nevada a little bit more so, just because the Spartans and the Wolfpack have played very tight games over the years. Even when Nevada's a heavy underdog, that game's in Reno this year, and that could potentially be a tough game for San Jose State. Chubba Purdy and company. Jeff Choate was another one of these guys. I would just say this: Nevada's going to be competitive again this year. I would be shocked if they weren't. Jeff Choate is a really good coach. And remember, I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but Nevada lost every one-score game possible last year. That's got to improve. I think their defense is just maybe a tad bit underrated. I'm interested to see what Chubba Purdy looks like. I thought Brendan Lewis last year was actually pretty good for Brendan Lewis standards. He looked terrible at Colorado, and he came back and did some good things last year. Now he's at Memphis. He just won the starting quarterback gig there. But Chubba Purdy, I think they'll be able to rely on the run game. They got Marcus Bell on back at wide receiver. I think he'll have a productive season. So those are just some tough games. I'm sorry, SJSU. I'm sorry to the fan base that follows me, but I think there's a situation where, and again, I think this is the floor for San Jose State. Let me make that clear as well. 9-3 overall, 6-2 in Mountain West. I think this team could be a potential 9-win, 10-win team this year. As far as the conference is concerned, because look, they're avoiding Boise and Colorado State and UNLV, and you get the Fresno game at home. I would be shocked if they dropped the Fresno game, Matt Ensign company will probably feel a whole lot better about themselves in the regular season finale, and it's a rivalry game. Whether it's a bad season or a good season, it's a rivalry game. They're going to be up for it. I just think SJSU will get their revenge in that game. And San Jose State, again, I don't have the numbers in front of me, and we'll follow up with this, but they are very good since probably 2020 now. They are very good at home in conference play. So I really don't see a situation where maybe they drop one of these home games. I think it will be both all on the road, and the Utah State game and Nevada games do worry me a little bit. Those are probably their toughest games outside of the Texas matchup. Air Force, look, Air Force, I haven't picked third, but they're one of these teams this year, guys. We're going to find out what they're about by week 3. If you see that their offense is humming like it did towards the back end of last season and 2 years ago with Zach Larrier, they're going to be a really good football team because they got all these dudes on defense back. I think you're being much improved in that area. And if offensively they're able to score points, there's going to be not many teams that can stop that option offense. And I trust Troy Calhoun a lot. He had himself a down year last year, and every single time he misses a bowl game, he ends up making a bowl game. So Air Force, if the quarterback situation is not working out for him and it's week 6 and they're being terrible, I'll live with it. But Air Force, I expect a massive bounce back season for them. UNLV, look, they got the SEC athletes, and they're going to be very talented, I believe. But it's a tough schedule for them. It's a tougher schedule for them, and I don't really know what I'm going to get for them on offense. I'm not going to learn about them in week 0 versus Idaho State. That's for sure. Everyone will look good for them against the Bengals, and UNLV. I think Dan Mullen's a really good coach. I think he's going to be very successful there. I'm waiting to see what the offensive scheme looks like and just to see how the comfort level with all these guys. I don't know how D'Angelo Irving's going to play. He's barely taken any snaps in these games. I think Jake Pope will have himself a really good year defensively. I'm a big Marcel McDuffie fan. And UNLV, that's also not a great home field advantage either, which I think needs to be taken into some consideration. Fresno, I think they're going to be right in the middle of the pack. I think they will improve as the season goes on. I have my worries towards the start of the season, and I wouldn't be shocked if it's a little rocky there to start. Like I said before, you can't rule out Carson Conklin coming in if EJ Warner struggles. So that's where I'm at with Fresno. Colorado State, they're going to be playing way more up-tempo this year. Coach Jay Norvell, which was pretty interesting, and I think it was very fair. When they lost Torrey Horton last year, that offense significantly was regressed. And that's pretty obvious with Torrey Horton. But this is a team that's going to be playing fast again with Braden Fowler Nicolosi. That's where he's comfortable. I'm a little bit on the fence with their wide receivers. I don't know what they look like right now. Defensively, it's a new scheme as well under Tyson Summers, which, can be a very interesting situation. They can only be better defensively. And I think offensively, they'll get back to their identity. It's just a very tough schedule for them. Like they're on the road at San Diego State, which is a game that I'd probably favor San Diego State in, despite we'll get to them being 12th in my polls. And it's a tough schedule for them. And it's one of these things, like if they go 1-3 in the non-conference and they lose that UTSA and Washington State games, I question where that group will be by week 7, week 8 timeframe. Folks, I think Hawaii is going to be a bowl team this year. I feel really good about that. I think this is year 4 with Timmy Chang. I love the vibes of that group at Mountain West Media Days. That's a group that I think is going to be better defensively, which they've never been very great at as a unit. They bring everybody back, which I love. And I think there was always a ceiling to Braden Shager at quarterback. I think Micah Alejado, you'll see the impact of him immediately. That's a team I like quite a bit this year to at the very least make a bowl game. Don't be shocked. They're going to get some teams on the island, no doubt, but there's going to be some tough situations that they endure this year. And they wouldn't be shocked if they go win out of Colorado State. I know it doesn't really say that on my schedule, but there's going to be some spots this year where they might not be in the greatest situation because of the travel, but they're going to pop up and all of a sudden the fourth quarter, it's a 1-score game and they have a lead in one of these games on the road this year. But the island obviously is a massive advantage for them. Wyoming, Now, if there's a team that maybe I felt better about heading into after Mountain West Media Days, that is, it's Wyoming. I thought John Michael Gillenborg and Jack Walsh uh, spoke some good things about the team. They had that revolving door at the quarterback position last year. I think Caden Anderson can only be better from Evans Vaboda. And I'll tell you what, they don't have Idaho on the schedule. They're not going to get crushed by Arizona State, and they're going to win some games in Laramie this year, especially those rivalry games. Nevada, I have them 5-7, but I think they're going to be very feisty all season long, just how they were last year. I think their defense is underrated. Like I said, offensively, we'll see where they're at. New Mexico, look, 5-7 for New Mexico would be a great year for them. And I think Jason Eck is going to be a very good coach for New Mexico. In year one, I think he's going to raise some eyebrows there. They have not had themselves the greatest camp from what I've read. I mean, they got players stuck overseas. Jack Lane's been on a pitch count, but I'm a big Scott Ray Humphrey fan. He's going to be a big part of their offense this year, the Montana State transfer. The league thinks highly of him. He hasn't played an FBS snap, and he was on the preseason all-conference list. And I think defensively, they're going to be very feisty. They got a bunch of FCS guys. They're basically an FCS all-star team, pinpointed from really good FCS programs. So I'm a big fan of Coach Eck. I think he's going to score some big-time wins this year. Most importantly, at New Mexico State or versus New Mexico State and home versus Utah State, which are the big games that are circled on Lobo fans' calendars. And look, folks, somebody's got to finish last. And I think it's going to be San Diego State. I don't feel the greatest about it. I do think they're going to be either 10th, 11th, or 12th. And I think this is going to be just your team that was like Nevada last year. I think they're going to be in some close games this year, and they're just not going to win those one-score games. Look, the floor for them I would say is pretty low. They probably got the toughest schedule in the Mountain West. Like their home games, you're like, man, they're a bunch of coin flip games. And then the road games, you're like, there might be one conference road game that they win. I think out of all of the coaches, Sean Lewis has probably got the most to prove. Maybe Jay Sawvell, but I would say this is a critical year for San Diego State. They got to get some people at Snapdragon Stadium, which I think is a downside to just this team. There's going to be no home field advantage for them, which I think is going to be basically you're going to be playing at a neutral site in a lot of these games in the Mountain West this year, which I think personally teams could go in there and beat them on the road. So, I just think they return a lot defensively. They got a lot of great individual defensive players like Tanu Lutuli. Their linebacker is awesome. Trey White, he's going to be a top pick in the NFL draft this year. First or second round. He is legit. He had 12.5 sacks last year. Mountain West preseason defensive player of the year. With all that being said, I just think this is a team that I don't really know what I'm going to get from offensively. Like I said, Jaden Denegal, he's got this body as a quarterback that is very polarizing and he could go run over some dudes, but I just have to see it on the field outside of week 1 versus Stony Brook to really see it. So this isn't the one where I could be completely wrong about and, or I could hit right on the head, but the schedule is just brutal for San Diego State this year. And honestly, I don't think anyone's going to really fear them in a sense when going to Snapdragon Stadium because there's not going to be a whole lot of butts and seats out there in Southern California. And look, that Aztec fast offense is a tough one to navigate. I would feel a whole lot better about this team if Danny O'Neal was coming back, but he darted and went to Wisconsin and he's the backup quarterback there. And he was a true freshman last year. I would have loved if he went and was in this system for another year. I might have had San Diego State as a bowl team because that was a team that just offensively, their identity, it wasn't really right. And then they were clicking towards the second half of the season quite a bit. So now you're basically starting from ground zero with this offense. They got some offensive linemen that are solid. And look, quite honestly, this has been like year number since like 10 years now where they just don't have a quarterback that's just going to go for all these yards and really light up the stat sheet. I think they haven't had like a 3,000 yard passer in 8 to 10 years. And I'm not sure if we're going to see that from Denegal or Burt Emanuel for that matter, if you want to throw him in there as well. So San Diego State, I think they're going to be a good unit defensively, but I think that unit has a chance to be on the field a lot if the offense is obviously not producing. And I think, unfortunately for them, they're just going to be this year's version or this year's version of what Nevada was last year. And that is that they're close in some of these games. They might give some of these teams a scare, and they just might not come on the right side of a win. If Colorado State goes to San Diego State this year, I think that was one of the wins I gave them. I'd have to go look back on the other ones. Like, they're going to have a coin flip game probably for last place, most likely, versus New Mexico. I think I gave them that one as well. But man, you look at that schedule and you think, like, they could, their ceiling might be 7 wins overall, and their floor can be 3 to 4. So that's where I'm at with San Diego State. I think it will be just, unfortunately, one of those years for them where the schedule doesn't go their way, and then next year the schedule may go their way for them, and then you're all of a sudden in the conversation on the top. Well, they won't even be in the conference next year, so that's up for grabs as well. But I think that will do it for us here on this live edition of the Sports Sentiment. We got football next weekend, folks. Week 0, we'll be back. We'll be talking all things college football. Week 0, we got tons of games on the slate. So we're going to do a nosedive into those games. Just break down the units there, some things that I see. Hawaii versus Stanford. We got 3 Mountain West teams playing there. We're going to have a San Jose State Central Michigan game preview coming out for you as well. We'll be talking with Central Michigan's play-by-play guy, and he'll be giving us, some intel on the Central Michigan football program, where it's at, the state of the program, personnel standpoint, and pretty much everything else in between. So keep your eyes and keep everything locked in there, because that's going to be coming up and released here pretty quick. But that will do it for us here on the Sports Sentiment. Once again, I am your host, Nick Urias. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, tell a friend, retweet, do all of that good stuff. And we'll be back next week here live on the Sports Sentiment.